Hello again, I'm Mona. I'm the moderator for this event, part of Team Auggie, the community powered platform where parents learn from experts and one another. So we're so glad that each and every one of you are here. Today we're talking about baby socialization, one of those topics where everyone seems to have an opinion, but very few people talk about what's actually developmentally appropriate. So we're joined by an incredible panel of experts. Jade Francis from Vivvi, Dr. Brooke Spector, pediatrician, mom, and co-founder of My Pediatrician Friend, and Kathryn Ressa, a speech pathologist and pediatric feeding specialist, each bringing deep practical insight into early social development. So, just in case people are wondering, this session will be recorded. And if you're just arriving, please feel free to drop your questions in the chat and we'll save that at the end for Q&A. So, we'll go ahead and get started. So my name is Mona Best, and I have two beautiful kiddos, 11 and 13, and I'm still wondering about socialization at their ages. I'm a parent coach, matrescence educator and guide, and also a fellow SLP, speech pathologist. So I love this topic, and I absolutely see the value in having a community and panel of experts to each weigh in. So thank you so much, Jade, Brooke, and Kathryn. We'd love some introductions and feel free to just pop in as you want to share.
Sure, I can start. My name is Jade Francis, and I am joining you all on behalf of Vivvi, which are early learning centers that are predominantly in New York, but sort of opening up to other areas of the country. I'm a trained teacher and currently still New York City certified for birth to age 7. And so I've worked in the educational space for the last sort of decade plus, and I am so passionate about social and emotional development of all kiddos. My background, my master's degree was in sort of a philosophy of education, and I think that there's so much there in terms of how we structure our societies and how we structure our communities and what that looks like for, the experiences that we create for children. Because we want to set them off on a great foot socially, and so that looks like different things in different places and at different ages. So I really enjoy being a resource for people as they're learning about what socialization looks like at each age, because it can look quite different. And some things that we think are not socialization actually are. And so I think it's a great opportunity to hear from others and also share some insights.
Thanks, Jade. I can go next. I'm Brooke Spector. I'm a mom of two kids, Willa, who just turned 8, and Theo, who just turned 5 and had his pre-K graduation this morning. And I am also a pediatrician. I'm double board certified in general pediatrics as well as pediatric hospital medicine. And I am one of the 3 co-founders of My Pediatrician Friend, which is a text-based support system around health questions for your child. I'm so excited to be here today. I particularly love this topic of socialization because I feel often it can be undervalued, especially at the expense of children's health. I think there's sometimes this thought of trying to keep a kid from getting sick and from getting illnesses. Whereas as pediatricians, we really value socialization as just so important to the health and well-being of a child at all ages. So I love this topic and I'm happy to be here for it.
Thanks so much, Brooke. I'm Kathryn Ressa. I'm a pediatric speech language pathologist and feeding specialist. I have my master's in speech language pathology as well as an advanced degree in pediatric dysphagia. I work with children across a wide range of ages and developmental stages, supporting everything from pre-linguistic skills, early communication, to more complex language challenges, as well as feeding difficulties that often overlap with sensory or developmental needs. My work is rooted in connection, helping kids use language to engage with the people in the world around them. That might look like building vocabulary, learning how to take turns, or supporting communication during moments of frustration or transition. I'm really excited to be a part of this conversation and hear from the other panelists about social development, what it can look like, and how we can nurture those skills every day.
Thank you to each of you. Our first question is, what does socialization look like in the first year or two of life?
So I think I can start, and I'm sure everyone will add some things to what I'm saying, but it really looks like sort of relationship building from the earliest sort of stages. Thinking of children are develop like, at this age are developing a sense of trust and mistrust, that they can trust people in their lives to take care of them and meet their needs, and what that process looks like of connecting. So what socialization looks like in this age is really that process of connection with your caregivers, but also people outside of your home who are caring for you, family members, friends of family, all those sorts of things. You want to give them the skills to sort of build connections with familiar people, and develop a trust that people will take care of them. And, if they are able to sort of vocalize or show, their needs are going to be met. And that's something that sort of sets you up for, future in your life, knowing that you can go to people, knowing that you can trust the people who are caring for you, and that people take care of each other. So in that space, it's really creating opportunities for connection, thinking about bottle feeding or tummy time. Is someone there with you, looking at you, cooing with you, doing all of those things that let you know that you're connected to each other?
I can also
Yeah.
jump in that some part of it is also connecting with your emotions inside and bringing them out to the surface. So, am I happy? What does happy look like? Am I angry? What does angry look like? Am I scared? And so, you're kind of having that very rudimentary beginnings of bringing what's inside you and showing it to someone else and being expressive in that way, which can be super cute too.
Yeah. And I would just like to add, as we touched upon, that it's all a foundation for language, right? So those back and forth exchanges, the cooing, the babbling during a diaper change or tummy time, those are all serving as the foundational skills for language.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I found that even being observant can help to build connection and noticing what your kiddo is interested in and going from there. What social milestones are typical to see in the baby and toddler years?
So I think the kind of things that we would typically see are infants sort of looking at the speaker or who is speaking, using their mouth, rooting around, those sorts of things, responding to enthusiasm, if someone greets them that they know, getting used to who are the familiar people in my life and who can I always sort of expect to see, being able to let you know what they like and dislike in their own way. That's often, crying or facial expressions or things like that. Turning heads towards new sounds and input that they're receiving. There's a lot of sort of social and emotional that happens as they're just being cared for. They're just experiencing the world, being fed, being changed, being held. And through those experiences and the connections that are happening is when we really notice that their skills are being built. We want to notice that they see the same person every day and they're excited to see them. They get excited and happy and are happy to sort of show that to people. So the skills and the smiling at their face in the mirror, things like that do support sort of their own identity formation at a very small, young age, but also that people sort of recognize that their identity is forming and, can support them along with that. When you see them looking at their face in the mirror, you can talk to them about the features that are there. You can, say, as Brooke was saying, like, you look very happy and, show a happy face to them as well. So once the children are sort of able to see you doing that and respond to that behavior, then we start to see the real development of the social skills for this age is when the response is happening, and response to stimuli as well as response to whatever is happening from another person.
Yeah, I think everything you said is very meaningful. And, the children, as you said, and babies are learning how to engage and how to connect with one another. This is all new and novel for them. So they're learning how to be a part of these shared moments. So, and it like always like comes back for me, at least as a speech therapist, it comes back to communication, right? So like smiling back at each other, looking at each other's faces, laughing. It's the beginning of social interaction, which is the pre-linguistic and all these pre-foundational skills for communication.
And one thing I always just love to add whenever developmental milestones come into play, as a pediatrician, it's just so important for us to realize that everybody goes at their own pace. And so when all of these different developmental milestones were created, they were created as a screen for us to be able to ensure that we weren't missing something bigger, to be able to make sure that we were going in the right direction. And sometimes people take that to be a very hard and fast, well, I'm supposed to do this by 6 months, or my kid's supposed to do this by 9 months, and they're not, so there must be a problem. And it's recognizing that these are just screens to allow us to then look at the bigger picture and recognize, are we moving in the right direction? Are we going in the way that we want to be? Can we maximize some areas? But I will say, as a pediatrician, I'm pretty sure both my kids, were behind in every single milestone that there was at different points in their lives. And, they eventually get there. And so it's just something to think through. I also, when I'm thinking of milestones, bringing back that kind of science background, I also like to think about kind of where from an evolutionary perspective sometimes are these coming from. And I find that really interesting, and it kind of allows things to make sense. So around that time when they're starting to want to walk, so kind of 6 months to a year, you're going to notice that they're not really wanting to cuddle with you as much. They're wanting to leave you. And that's that kind of need to be able to get up and walk and kind of give that drive. And then kind of around that really clingy phase when they start getting to about, 15 to 18 months. And so when they're really able to walk well, and the reason for that clinginess is, okay, well, now I can run. So I need something that's going to bring me back to safety. And so it kind of all does make sense, from these larger perspectives as well.
Yeah, and I think to sort of add off of what Brooke is saying, something that's very important to acknowledge is that it is different sort of across the board. And because we're really learning about the temperament of the child around this sort of age, is it's going to influence how we interact with that child based on their temperament. And so we want to support them with opportunities that match who they are and their identity as we're discovering it, but we're discovering it right along with them, which is one of, I think, the best parts about working with children is that you're discovering everything along with them. It's their first time experiencing things and you get to watch it through their eyes. But part of that is sort of being able to help them identify, those things that are going on so that they can further develop their own identity as they're getting larger.
I love that. I love thinking about how those milestones can provide a level of just guides, and at the same time, even within your own family, attuning to that identity and that child and how it can be similar and overlap in characteristics and skills, but they can also be really different. And so, how do you hold all of that together? Thank you so much. That kind of helps us segue into that next question regarding how should parents handle clinginess, disinterest, or even aggression in social settings. That seems to be one that comes up, and oftentimes that can be places of such stress. And even shame for parents when they're observing these really normal characteristics, or also feeling like, what do I do? I'm at a loss in these social arenas.
Yeah, I can start with this one. I feel like, again, as a pediatrician, I'm constantly seeing children, and I have so much grace and patience for whatever they bring. And then when it's my own child, there's just this strong feeling of, no, don't act like, don't do that. And so, I really, I get it. We have 20, 30, 40 years of experience, and they have, 1 to 2 years of experience. So there's going to be so much that they're still learning, and they're figuring out, and there are some pieces that seem really negative in the moment that are actually the early development of really wonderful and positive social skills. So, something like clinginess can actually be really wonderful social awareness of recognizing, like, I can't just march into any room and start talking about whatever I feel like. I need to understand what's happening in this room. I need to understand who's there. I need to make sure that I'm comfortable and this is, a safe environment for me to walk into. But of course, there's always those moments when, when something that will go on to be positive can start to get to a point of being a negative and not wanting to join in. I think one of the best things to do is to model that behavior as often as you can. So, joining in on, starting a conversation with the friend or starting an activity that maybe they're not that they're not feeling comfortable to join in on. If they're not showing an interest, you showing an interest and kind of having them eventually take their time and join. Aggression is different. There has to be, the understanding, but then also, the clear boundaries. So, I understand the emotion and I understand why you're feeling that way, and it's okay to feel that way, but it's not okay to do the behavior, and kind of separating that feeling and behavior is crucial in those moments. Oh,
I think you're muted, Kathryn.
Sorry,
Thank
I
you.
wanted to piggyback off of that. When you spoke
Mhm.
about modeling, I think that's like a really important part to hone in on, because babies and young children, they're mirror neurons. So like the brain cells that activate when they see us doing something are really strong. So they're learning through imitation. So by watching our body language, our facial expressions and our gestures and how we respond, they begin to mirror and internalize that too for themselves. So this is a really like key part of their development. So why modeling, as you said, Brooke, these like predictable, appropriate responses during these like stressful moments is really powerful.
Mhm. Yeah, I think creating a very safe base, for the child does often lead to feelings of clinginess or disinterest because they see you as their safe space. If I'm ever scared, if I'm ever worried, this is the person who I can go to, and I know that they'll take care of me. So providing some opportunities for a little bit of risk within that as well, of like, you can go off and do your thing, but I'm still going to be here. That sort of secure base idea that we find in sort of child development, that they trust that you are going to be there and protect them, but it's okay for them to go off and do their own thing for a bit. And so you want to continue to create opportunities like that so that it's, developing a greater sense of independence as they get bigger, to understand that it's okay to be away or with other people, or, with my mom's friend or with my aunt, and still feel comfortable. I know that I'm going to continue to be safe like throughout that whole experience. And also, thinking about temperament again and disinterest. If someone is disinterested, what are they interested in? How can we give them sort of access to things that are going to interest them, knowing that they're all different and all have different likes and dislike. They're all not all going to like the same thing or want to sort of be involved with the same amount of people in the same environments, with the same materials, in the same parks. They're all going to have different things that we like. So how can we balance that sort of interest level with risk and being able to sort of go off on your own a little bit, but still have a very secure base that someone's always going to help you, keep you safe, take care of you, and give you space to sort of grow as who you are.
Well, that's beautiful. Everything that each of you contributed lends itself to a connection-based parenting. And you're modeling and able to attune to where they're at, but also through your modeling, providing them cues of safety, help them to take risks, but also know that you are kind of that secure base that they can return to after they do a bit of exploration. So, can you share with us what is your perspective regarding what's actually happening during separation anxiety phases?
Yeah. Separation anxiety is like a typical part of development, and it's healthy. It means that the child has formed this secure attachment to their caregivers and recognizes that these grown-ups are their safe space. And then around 9 to 18 months when babies start to understand object permanence. So like you exist even though you're not right in front of me. They also begin to feel that distress when they're separated. But their brains aren't fully developed enough to manage that uncertainty that even though you're gone, that you're going to come back. So when you see crying, protesting, the clinginess, it's actually a healthy sign that the attachment system is working. So it's not something we want to fix, but it's something that we want to support through consistent routines, really predictable environments as much as we can. Life happens, and just reassurance so that the children and these babies understand that separations are safe and they're going to be a part of our lives and they're temporary. And this is how to move through it.
Yeah, I think it's off of what Kathryn is saying, just supporting the process of like this is something that's different and a little scary, but you're going to, get through it. Something we invite a lot of new children into our school on a very, regular basis, and something we always tell them is like, your parents are going to come back. Every time they're going to come back and get you. So, you can feel comfortable that they are not leaving you. This is scary, but you are doing a great job. You're being very brave. You are being very brave, and there's all these new things, but someone is always going to come back for you. And that does provide comfort to the children. And also the idea of sort of, if they've never spent any time away with you, I think of how scary it can be if you've not spent time away from, your parents or caregivers, and then all of a sudden you don't see them all day. I think that would give anybody sort of pause. But I really try to think when we're welcoming new children to our environment, what that feels like. If you've never been away and all of a sudden you're with new people, you're in a new environment, and that can probably feel very scary, and you have no way of saying. And so part of it is continuing to build that connection with all other caregivers, but partnering with the families as well to ensure that that child feels safe and comfortable. And again, that an okay amount of risk, nothing that's going to, give anyone a bad experience or make them have bad associations.
Yeah, I think Jade, you like highlighted something really important, that these babies and children aren't able to express themselves and how they're feeling, right? Because they're able to understand, their receptive language is stronger than they're able to express. So I think then we can use really consistent language or understand, right? Like XYZ is coming back after school, first school, then back home. So these children can understand the routine, the predictability, and then they can start to name what's happening and their feelings. So if you model like, I see you're feeling upset that I'm leaving, right? You're giving them the language so they can understand it, and then in turn they can use it. So then this will give them a greater sense of security in these moments that feels so scary and uncertain for them.
I also find it's helpful too, from the parent perspective, to kind of give off a feeling that the separation is not a negative. So instead of, oh, I'm going to miss you so much, but I'll see you later. One thing that I kind of started with my daughter when she was young and did it regularly, was, we go out, we do big, amazing things, and then we come home together tonight and we tell each other about those big, amazing things. And I kind of said a version of that almost every morning for a good year and a half. And then one day, not knowing if it was hitting, by any means, I heard her say it to her baby brother. He was a baby, had no idea what she was saying, but it was showing me that, she really did internalize that, and that meant something to her. And did she still show all the signs of separation anxiety outwardly? Yes. But inwardly something was clicking, and eventually, that meant something to her.
I love those moments when you do see that something you've been modeling or shaping or hoping towards a certain end reveals itself in play. And that's so exciting. When you guys are talking about supporting, and Brooke, you were kind of sharing a little bit practically, is there anything that parents can do either before that event where the separation will occur? And then how do they support that kind of reuniting when they're picking their kiddos up again, or they're back together after they've been apart?
Yeah, I can start just to continue on. So, one, like I said, is making it not something that's negative or to dread or not a bad thing that has to happen to the family that we'll get through, but rather, there's some wonderful parts to us going off and exploring and learning and, contributing to society, and then, coming back home together to each other, kind of in that safe mode. I also feel that, in these beginning times, especially around that time of separation, having a strict routine so that they know what to expect. So, having this, if possible, and obviously life, gets in the way, but if possible, having the same person bring them to school. So if there is a different caregiver that brings them to daycare or to school or to a class, and you happen to be home one day and want to do it, some children, that might not actually be a great thing, because then we're kind of disrupting the routine, and then, where does that go? So sometimes just having a very, okay, I have breakfast, then I brush my teeth, and now I'm going to blow kisses. Another thing that I also found was helpful is that kind of creating the separation in a way that's not so abrupt. So something like blowing kisses and having them catch it is something that you can do kind of as you're walking away. And so they're doing it and doing it and doing it, and it kind of slows it rather than just an abrupt goodbye. So these different kind of things will help. And sometimes it's trial and error. Sometimes it's, trying a few different things, but I think trying to make it positive, trying to keep a routine going, are some of the best ways to really help with that type of separation.
And I think also extending it just based on, your knowledge of what they did when they were away from you. So them being able to have a good time, maybe with a family member or something, and the family member letting you know what they did, and then you talking to the child about that. So just again, like creating that connection between the experience that they've had somewhere else and the experience that they've had with you. Or if they went to a music class or they did an art project at like a drop-in day, maybe it's that. Maybe just talking about what they've created or the materials they used or anything like that, because obviously they hear everything that you're saying to them and they take it all in, even if it doesn't always seem like they are. They're taking that in and they love to hear their caregiver's voice talking to them and excited and, excited to see them as well. So just providing opportunities to have experiences for, the two of you or the three of you or however many it is of you so that you can come back together. And kind of what Brooke was saying, share the fact that you did really fun things, or like you met new people, or you engaged with a new material that you had never touched before. Those all things sort of support the child to reunify after their separation, and so that it becomes something that's normal and something that they're okay with. I'm okay to be away, but I'm also really excited to be back. That's the kind of thing that you want to foster for them.
Yeah, one of our participants had shared that he started reading Llama Llama Mrs. Mama to her toddler, and she can tell that her toddler is becoming more comfortable with being away now because there's a predictability and routine and a language word is schema. They've got that kind of picture in their mind of what happens in these particular events. So thank you so much. Um, as we look at our next topic in terms of the role of the environment in social growth, how does early learning environments support social emotional development?
So yeah, I can start with that one. So I am the curriculum and learning manager for Vivvi, which, as I said earlier, is a child care center across areas of New York. We have infants, toddlers, preschool, the whole sort of early childhood age range. And I think that something really special is that our environments are created solely for the children. So if you are in an infant classroom, you'll see a lot of mirrors at their level. You'll see a lot of pull-up bars, things like that that sort of support their development. But it's also a place where they can engage in a lot of different sort of activities that perhaps they wouldn't otherwise. Certain sensory things, or there's lots of water, there's lots of dirt, soil, things like that, which can be a little bit messy, but we have the sort of space and, the will to get down and dirty with them fairly often so that they can experience those new things. We're also very focused on sort of the relationship building. At least in New York City, I think it can be very isolating. People often move here, away from their family, away from their sort of networks of people. And so when they have a child, that's part of it. And so we try to sort of create an experience so that the children have, additional caregivers, people who care for them, people who know their schedule, people who are excited to be with them and see them to further support the family. And as we're saying, that supports their development because they develop more trust that people are going to take care of me. I'm going to be safe if I'm away from my caregiver, and I'm going to have a good time generally. I'm going to, be happy to be somewhere else and experience new things. So excited to see them at the end of the day. But this is also an opportunity for me to develop stronger relationships with others and realize that people take care of each other outside of just my family, but with other people. And it allows us to sort of offer a lot of learning experiences for them as well, that, differ from what they may see if they are outside, alone and, kind of in the stroller or just, not interacting with sort of other people or even other babies as well. They're doing a lot of, mostly parallel play at that point. They're not sort of, making friends in that sense, if you will, but it does give exposure to maybe other infants, other babies, other adults that they would not otherwise see. And the earlier those sort of connections can be made, the sort of better, because it's something that carries on with them, that it's comfortable to be in a new space with new people, some people who are around my age, people that I see every day. Those are really the beginnings of social development. So we're very well primed in early learning environments to offer experiences that really support what we want to see in terms of social, physical development of infants and toddlers.
Yeah, that was all really great. And Vivi does such a great job at having such a warm, responsive, and language-rich environment for babies to toddlers. And I just wanted to piggyback off of something you said that they may be parallel playing some of these children, but I think that being around these other peers, even if they're not engaging cooperatively with them, they're still observing, imitating, and experimenting with these social behaviors in real time, right? So they're learning from their friends around them and they're picking up on things like how they get attention, how they solve a problem, ways they express themselves, and like over time, they start to implement those themselves. So that's also in a social environment, they're using these strategies in a developmentally appropriate way, which is really great.
I think also when we're starting to have these earlier peer relationships, we're also starting to understand the concept of something that might not be fully positive. And so when someone, takes your toy and that really doesn't feel good, how do we recover from that? Because that is, these are important parts of socialization. These are important parts of connection and community, which is that there's going to be some parts that are not fully positive, that you don't always get the full attention, all the toys, everything that you want. And so what does that feel like and how do I recover? How do I navigate? And so even kind of starting to develop that as well.
That's wonderful when you think of social, emotional tools or toys or books. Do you have something that comes to mind that's like a favorite recommendation?
I love using a mirror with like babies too, so they can see their
Mhm.
facial expressions too, and they can kind of like see how, and you can put yourself in it too, so they can see like the different faces and turn take and back and forth with it, because a lot of times they don't really understand what they're expressing on their face, but putting it in front of them is giving them that real time. And it's also really fun to see what they do when they're in front of a mirror and experiment with just sounds, facial expressions, and gestures.
And I think also just the addition of like maybe not anything specific, but like storytelling, puppets, music is a massive one. Just singing to them all the time are wonderful ways of sort of in a way that's not so yes, you're narrating what you're doing and things like that, but this is something that's a little more exciting. They love puppets and things like that, things that they can see and look and silly voices and, loud and quiet and just, a different variety of mediums. But I think that the idea of sort of the storytelling, the reading books with them, the sharing expression, all of those things further their social development because it's the things that you want to see from them. If you have an emotion, we want to see it. And so showing them what those different emotions look like so that when they're when they're in an environment where that's the emotion that they're feeling, they'll be able to express it or show you. And once you've given them that language, then you can kind of narrate what they're doing. But they do love the songs and things like that. They all have their favorites that they love to hear, and they're not able to sing, but they do love to hear it. Sing-songy voices and things like that really do support that as well.
I love that, Jade. The concept of just dancing and that togetherness and being able to connect with the other person who's dancing, also smile at someone else's moves, recognize that they're smiling at your moves, and that's such a wonderful way to connect it, even before there's much language there.
I love it. The power of play, it just cannot be emphasized enough over and over again, especially if we, as parents, sometimes aren't familiar or even comfortable with play and how to engage our children. But I like how you guys have kind of nodded to there's a variety of ways that we can engage and meet them where they're at. Thank you so much. We can move into questions at this time. I have one that participant is asking. I have a 2-year-old and am due any day now. So congratulations to you. She's due with her second, and she's curious about what she can do that'll be mutually beneficial for their socialization and connection with one another. What a beautiful question. Thank you.
So I can start. I think one of the biggest things when first bringing kind of home, the new member of the family is also recognizing in terms of where they are developmentally. And so the baby developmentally really is just wanting to feed, right? They want to feed. Their connection is, did someone connect me to warmth and safety? But they don't need in the same way that physical attention. So one thing that I think sometimes doesn't maybe get said enough is we can pay a ton of attention to that older sibling. So while I'm feeding the baby, I can make sure I'm feeding the baby, but then I can be watching my 2-year-old. Amazing dancing, amazing throwing a ball, amazing this. This is so great. It doesn't have to be that when I'm feeding the baby, this is the baby's time. And so I do think that there is an element of, oh, okay, this baby is still a positive thing. They're not taking away this really important person to me. They're able to be here, and my parent is still able to give me attention and give me focus. And so kind of allowing them to come together so that there's not that beginning of a rift, and rather there's this beginning of there can be another family member and I can still feel really secure and comforted. And then that kind of leads to a positive building and positive connections. And involving the older, kid in as much as possible. So if we're, bathing, they get to bathe the little toes, or, if I'm doing the changing, they get to sing to them while we're changing the baby. So just having them kind of be involved in these early stages, and that just leads to, I'm interested. I want to be a part of this baby rather than, ignoring them. And congratulations, that's such an exciting time.
Yeah, and just off of that, I think, what Brooke said a lot about the secure base and making sure that you maintain a safe space for, each child to sort of grow and flourish as they would like to, and thinking about the routine for the older child that, their routine changing quite a lot is going to make them feel more unsettled, even sometimes more so than the new baby. It's just that everything is so different. So thinking about the things that you can do to sort of maintain a little bit of routine for the older child and to provide some opportunities for, just time with caregivers or special little moments, kind of like what we were talking about before. So they still acknowledge that I'm still very secure and my bases have not changed, even though there's a lot going on in my world. So just providing opportunities to do that. And as the new family member is in this space, those pieces will come as that child feels comfortable and safe and like this is not a threat in any way, but that, this is a new member of the family. And I think sort of having that as a sort of base, guiding principle is a wonderful way of doing things because there's going to be challenges related to it. But what you can do to make both of those children feel safe and comfortable and like, I'm safe no matter what, I think the easier things will be.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to get caught up in how am I going to manage XYZ? How can I orchestrate? How can I facilitate? But it's really just, taking a step back and not trying to orchestrate it all, right? How Brooke said, it's in these everyday moments, right? A newborn is just really sleeping, feeding, the simple things. So just allowing the opportunities like, to arise in time and also continuing to do things with your 2-year-old that you really like and saying, oh, why don't we show, the new baby how we do a dance party and things like that. So you're acknowledging that there are still these shared things that you had and now we're welcoming someone else into it, or we can show them how to do it, but really just, taking it like being kind to yourself during it because it's also a big transition for the whole family.
Thank you. We have another question. How early is it to try and emphasize sharing with others? Um, our participant has a son who's 1 and wants to play with all the toys that the other kids are playing with. So this participant's aware that her kiddo is still young and yet has a desire to set a good foundation for learning how to share.
I think this is a great age to model sharing and kind of narrate too, because it's hard at 1 years old to really, because they're more in that egocentric, my stage. And the play is mostly parallel. So you're playing next to another child and it's not, you want to start working towards the cooperative, but you can say, I'm giving you a block. Now it's your turn, or let's take turn with the bubbles, things like that. So you're showing them how to do it. But it's challenging and it's going to just take a lot of trial and error. And it's also appropriate for a 1-year-old to not want to share. And we want to see that. We want to see them protesting and, pushing boundaries in that way. It's healthy for development.
And I love how you mentioned setting a foundation, because I think that this is one of those areas where, kind of saying the same thing over and over again will be really helpful. And you're probably not going to see changes right away, but you eventually will. So with this, a common way to approach it is, not that you can't have it, but when they're done playing with it, then it'll be your turn. And also just thinking about how that is in our adult life. I mean, if I was sitting here and reading a book and someone just came in, and said, I want that book. But, the response, would be, well, I would love for you to have the book. When I'm done, I'll let you borrow it. And so that's something that, kind of, from the beginning. So if your son wants to play with someone else's toy, instead of, oh, you can't, he's playing with it. Oh, can he play with it when you're done? And, done might be 2 days from now, but it's still that concept of, yes, you can play with it when they're done. And again, it's probably not going to be something that works right away, but over time, they'll start to recognize it'll be my turn when they're done.
And I think another concept sort of going off of that is the idea of just space. Because oftentimes when, toys are sort of being grabbed or things like that, it's because people are very close to each other in the physical space. You being so close to someone that you can sort of grab or scratch or, take whatever is something in itself. And so we do talk to children about the idea of space, of like, that child needs space. And so developing this sort of idea of like, a little space from each other, like, yes, you want this thing, but you're too close to this person's body to sort of get it, is also a way to sort of think about sharing and socialization in groups of children. Because they often, the same with us, sometimes they're very, very close. And as they get older, that looks different in terms of how much space you need to give people. If you're used to your caregiver holding you all the times and you're put next to another child, you're going to get very close. And that is going to sort of, make some people not feel as great or not feel comfortable to everyone. And so it's a good time to sort of start talking about what that space means and looks like before it gets to the toys.
Yeah, thank you. I like to think of skill building also in times outside of a heated moment where maybe sharing or that kind of challenge is occurring. And even and trying it out with puppets or toys and doing a role play or something so that outside of the moment they can begin to build the language for sharing or the capacity to understand those types of scenarios that they'll encounter wherever they go. We have another question regarding tantrums. This participant's kiddo is 19 months old and has started to have tantrums, and sometimes they can be quick and easily resolved, while other times they've literally lasted 45 minutes and the issue itself can feel unclear. And this parent can feel like nothing they've done can help to kind of resolve the situation. So, in terms of socialization, what do each of you recommend with how to deal with tantrums? Maybe how to shorten or reduce the frequency, or even how do we perceive that tantrum that helps inform how we will approach problem solving component?
I think like in the question, it's some of them make sense, right? When there's like a clear trigger, like leaving the park, but the other ones, when they're hard to understand, may just come from like being tired or even something that happened earlier. So I think in those moments, you're trying not to solve for the tantrum, but just like being calm and kind of working through it and just again, like modeling the appropriate reaction and co-regulating, I think is the best thing you can do from a socialization standpoint. Um, but again, like your child's 19 months, so this is developmentally appropriate, right? Like they're starting to feel these big emotions, frustration, disappointment, and confusion, but they don't have the language or they're still developing the self-regulation skills to express and manage this. So we see tantrums. So I think from socialization, just really being that safe and sound person and just kind of co-regulating, working through it, and being really calm for them.
And I think something that's wonderful to sort of start to think about in the infant and toddler age range is practices around like mindfulness and self-regulation. So being aware of what's going on in your body and in your mind and what those things feel like. And not only that, but what you can do if you feel a certain way. If you are, feeling very high energy or you're feeling very upset about something, giving the tools so that the child is able to learn, what do I do if I feel this way and I want to calm down? That could be getting a favorite book or a stuffy they like, or sitting in a quiet place alone. And over time, they'll be able to sort of regulate that emotion themselves and say, like, I need a break. And then, when they're ready, to come back and sort of talk about what happened. Because often at the tantrum, phase, there's not much talking to be done right then. But after the child has sort of calmed down and self-regulated, there is space to say sort of, logic based of like what has happened here, but using it as a time to just be like, I see you feel very angry. These are some things that you could do. Providing tools throughout not just times of strife or when things are going in a bit of a negative way, but also, other times you feel very happy. This is something you could do. These are tools that you can use if you ever feel X, Y, or Z. If you are upset because playtime is ending too soon, let's think about getting you a timer and see if that will help you to sort of feel better and be able to more prepare for what's coming up. So there's, tools and things like that around sort of mindfulness and just being aware of what's going on so that children are able to sort of start regulating their own emotions with our help and sort of narrating how they're feeling, what they're looking, the big emotions that they're having. But as you get older, the onus is on you to sort of figure out what you need in order to come back to a calm state.
And just to emphasize a little bit more of what Kathryn had said too, and those kind of 45-minute ones where we're not sure what's going on, often it's that we got dysregulated about something and then we don't even remember what it is, and it's that state that we just can't get out of. And so really, kind of coming out, just like Kathryn said, of not having a problem solving, but just being that calmness. So really taking those big deep breaths, because I'm sure that your heartbeat is just as high as hers in those moments. And so really trying to take those deep breaths, show the calmness, show that that you are not scared in these moments, you are not dysregulated, and kind of sharing that calmness can really help. Letting it, take as long as it takes, as long as she's safe. But yeah, it's, each phase has its, really wonderful parts and its challenges.
Thank you. Do you feel like you have time for one more question? I just want to honor kind of our window here.
Sure.
I'll pose it and then we can just maybe keep it real quick if that's needed. A participant has shared that her daycare has told her about her toddler biting and hitting, even though her child has good communication skills and is able to say no and is past teething. So she's curious about what might be going on here and then any recommendations for what she can do at home. So they have read some books and she's unclear if it's helped. Yeah, thank you so much for your input.
Yeah, I can start. I know we had talked about it a little bit before in terms of, when a child is being more aggressive, but it's really working hard to separate the emotion and from the behavior. So, it's okay to be upset. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to have all of those feelings. It's not okay to hit. It's not okay to bite. And so trying to even give them, something else that they can do, crunch your fists really hard, walk away, something that might feel really, that you need to do physically if that's how you're feeling, but really separating. It's okay to feel the feeling. It's not okay to bite. It's not okay to hit. And also asking your daycare to say the same things every time. So if that happens, it's okay to be angry. It's not okay to hit. And so kind of really having that consistent separation.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, like keeping them separate and also labeling, like you feel angry, you feel frustrated, and then give them the alternative of what to do. You can squeeze your fists, you can, you can jump, things like that. So you're also starting to connect the word or the feeling to that like internal feeling that the child's feeling as well. So then with time, hopefully they're able to express themselves more.
Yeah, and I think also another piece in just terms of the partnership with whoever your children's teachers are, more information about what is happening, right before the bite. And, is it over a toy? Is it, random? Is it because they were upset or because they were really happy and excited? It could be all those different reasons, genuinely. And so it's important to see what is the specific thing that, the reason that your child is, say, biting or hitting as well, and using that to sort of guide sort of how you would support them? Is it a sensory thing related to things in their mouth or their teeth? Like, even if it's not related to teething, maybe they just like having something in their mouth. There's, tools and things that you can use to support with that would not, injure another child or impede like learning in any way. So just, fostering the conversation of learning why the behavior is happening, so that you're able to better support with a tool or narration or anything like that.
Thank you. I love that note about collaboration. And even sometimes understanding that behavior is just the tip of the iceberg, but there are many things below the waterline that may be contributing to that expression of frustration or anger. So thank you so much. On that note of collaboration, we just value what each of you do. Thank you, Brooke, Kathryn, and Jade, for joining us today and this important conversation on social emotional development and supporting the caregivers that are right there, supporting the development of those skills, but also holding the big emotions that come alongside that journey. So, thank you for your insight. If any of you would like to continue this conversation, you can always find us inside the Auggie app. We're here with the expert events, real parent recommendations, and judgment free support at every stage. So tell a friend, and we'll see you at the next one. Thank you so much, everyone, for your participation. Bye bye.